Greetings. This is Trustee Edward Steve, former Trustee Edward Steve, and we here to have another interview with Dalton trustees. And today we got our interview, or we're interviewing, is the youngest trustee, Trustee Britney Norwood. Trustee Britney Norwood. How you doing today, Trustee?
Hello, happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
I'm just great. And
You
yourself?
just great? Just great. I'm great. I'm glad you sat down with us. There's a lot of things going on in the village of Dalton, so we're gonna get right into it. Let's talk about you and your history. She always says that she grew here, y'all flew here. Talk about your growth in Dalton and your history in Dalton.
So I've actually been here in Dalton. I've lived here since I was 10. So for the last 25 years, I've been a Dalton resident. My younger brothers, they were actually on the Dalton Riverdale baseball team. I graduated from Norwood High School, and my very first job was at Wendy's, right around the corner from my old house, right there on Sibley.
All right, good stuff, good stuff. And talking about, also, how many children do you have?
I have a 17-year-old son.
17-year-old son, how's he doing?
He's doing pretty good. You know, teenagers, they could be a bit much.
Bit much. Also, talk about, what do you do for a living?
So I wear a few hats, right? I'm a realtor, so I've been a realtor for the last 8 years. I'm coming up on my 9th year anniversary. And I'm also an insurance agent, but that's new.
That's new. And for the record, she was my real estate agent when I bought my house for me and my family here in Dalton. She's the one that found the house for me. So
Yes.
how many new families have you brought into Dalton who become homeowners over the last 8 years?
I like to say over 100 residents. I brought over 100 residents
100
to
residents.
the village of Dalton.
Okay, that's good stuff. And so how have you tried to use your real estate experience in your position as trustee?
So the ultimate goal was for me to be on the housing committee, because it only made sense since I'm familiar with real estate. But being on the housing committee, of course, wasn't easy, is what I learned. The whole goal was to try to occupy some of these vacancies, because we're all residents here, and we know that over the last few years, we've had more vacancies than usual. So my goal was to connect us, the village of Dalton, with the land bank, so that we can have them assist us with restoring some of the homes or putting them back on the market, so that we can sell them and occupy them and put them back on the tax roll.
Yeah. And what kind of derailed that?
The mayor. So her whole goal was to bring a program, I want to say it was called like a block.
Yeah.
So her plan was to, and don't quote me because it's been a few years,
Yeah.
but her plan was to sell the homes to residents for $5,000, sell it to home buyers for $5,000, to sell the homes to home buyers for $5,000, and to sell them to investors for $1. And she said the goal was to sell them to investors for $1 and then have them give us a piece of the proceeds.
Yeah.
And what I told her is that I didn't think that was a good idea, because I've been in real estate long enough to know that if you sell it for $1 and then for whatever reason a person never puts the house on the market, or they sell it for relatively cheaper, then it's a possibility that the village wouldn't really benefit, or really wouldn't make any money, or probably wouldn't even go through with it properly being on the tax payroll. And that was my concern.
And I think, because I was on the board at that time, I think the hardest thing, as it always is with this administration, is never getting down to the details. They give you like the grandiosity, the sales pitch, and they sell it to the residents, but then you get to the details, it's always missing. So I remember that was a real tough, a lot of arguments around that. So I understand why we didn't go with the block by block program. Talk about your start in politics. Because people don't know, me and we interviewed Jason House and Kiana Belcher. They ran with Tiffany. Me and you came in with the former mayor. So when you ran, you were with the former mayor, and when I ran, I was with the former mayor.
I'm running as trustee on Mayor Rogers' slate this upcoming election, and I'm asking for your support on February 23rd.
So we were never with the Dream Team or with Tiffany Hinyard's ticket. We were on the opposite side, but I won. But you, on this last election, you won. What got you started in politics?
So the start was, I lived maybe about 7 years ago. I lived in the Greenwood Fountains condos, and one night my son, I was trying to go to bed, and my son, he started calling my name. He's like, Mom, someone is fighting. So I was like, okay, mind your business, let me go back to sleep, type of thing. And maybe for like the next 5 minutes, he's like, Mom, someone's fighting. So I went to the front door to open it to see what was taking place, because I realized it was serious at that time. And there was smoke everywhere. At that time, I realized that our condo complex was on fire. And we spent like the next hour trying to see how we were going to exit the complex unharmed. So we couldn't go down the stairs because smoke was everywhere. And the fire department came. They took us down on the ladder. And at that time, we met our former mayor, Rogers, and his media guy, I want to say Ashad Trish.
Yeah.
And he actually did my very first video for the village, just asking about the fire. And from there, I became involved because I realized how important community was and these services.
Yeah. And I think you got involved with the Chamber of Commerce. You did a few things before you actually ran for office. Talk about that, what you did before you actually ran for office.
Yes, so for the last few years, I used to take my son to the meetings with me all the time, even though they used to be like 4 hours long.
Yeah.
I used to, try to teach him to learn the importance of community. So I would always attend the meetings. I would always volunteer my services for the former mayor. So he always had a lot of things for seniors and children. So I would volunteer for every event just to help out, see what I can do. We went on the bike ride, the cabin trips. So we kind of look forward to having some community fun. I used to do that. And then I was also on the Chamber of Commerce in Dalton. So we used to host events for the business owners to try to figure out how we can help them lower their taxes. So we used to do that for a few years with the chamber. What else? Oh, and then besides that, I was just always around seeing how I can help.
Okay. So how did you feel when you won? Or what made you run for office?
One day I was driving down the expressway and I got a call from Mayor Rogers. And Mayor Rogers called and he said, hey, I'm about to rerun for mayor and I was wondering if you'd like to be on my ticket. And I was like, oh, yes, of course. So from there, I took off running and I started the great race.
Yeah. That's the same thing happened to me. I was out of town. He called me and said, hey, Ed, you interested in running for trustee? I said, cool, because I was already, you're already involved. You're already seeing the madness going on. So you're like, hey, I might as well, right? How did you feel when you won?
It was good.
Did you think, when you got into the race, did you think you could win? It was 50-50. Yeah.
Mainly because I've been around the community for quite some time and I was pretty familiar with the residents and they were pretty familiar with me, but I don't know if I expected to win. My dad used to always tell me, well, if you don't win the first time, it's okay. No one ever wins the first time they run. Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. So it was bittersweet.
So what did your dad say when you called him? You told me this story, but tell the story when you called him because he didn't think you won. But tell me what you said, what your dad said.
Yeah, I said, so I called him. I said, Dad. So before the election that night, he said, okay, how you feeling? I said, well, we're about to wait for the results. And he said, well, just so you know, if you don't win, I don't want you to beat up on yourself too much because no one wins their first time, okay? So just know that you've done your best. I said, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
So when you called him and said you won, what did he say?
He was like, no. He was like, first he thought I was kidding. So he was like, no, you didn't. And I was like, no, Dad, I did win. And he started yelling. He was like, you won, for real? And I said, yeah, Dad. He said, hold on, let me call you back. So he just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that was a good feeling. That was a good feeling. And what people don't know, which I learned, Britney got a lot of family in Dalton. You got a lot of people that knows her. I was at the polling place. Oh, I know Trustee Norwood. I know Britney Norwood. I went to school with her. I went to Thornridge. So when your numbers came out, because you the only one that won from that ticket, the incumbent mayor lost and the other two trustees lost. And you got the second most votes. You got more votes than the mayor did. So, I mean, a lot of people don't know that. If you look at our video of how, the lie of I won by 82% of the vote. She only won by 4% of the vote. She won by like 130 votes, something like that. But you got more votes than the mayor. So when you see them voters turning, you got the second most votes behind Jason House. What do you think?
It was unreal. It was unreal. That night, everything about the night was different because the plan was for my entire ticket to win. And we were ready to party that night. So the goal was for us to all win and party and call it a day.
And I was at the campaign office, and it was sad because the mayor had a stroke. You know what I mean? So he was in the hospital. So we're all there, kind of down because he lost, but then take the politics out of it, he had a stroke. He was in a hospital. You know what I mean? So that was another downer to it, but then we were all excited for your win. You know what I mean?
Yes, but that night didn't go anything as planned, of course.
Yeah.
Because as you stated, without your, because he led our campaign.
Yeah.
So without the leader of the campaign, it kind of felt a little incomplete.
Yeah.
And I know how hard he worked.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that was the downing part.
Yeah.
And then instead of partying, of course, since I was the only one that won, it was bittersweet because I was excited about winning, but because none of my other teammates won, it was hard for me to celebrate.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that.
It was really hard.
Because it wasn't like a joyous time at the campaign office.
No, it was.
But we were happy for you. But I understand. Yeah, I understand. It was a little awkward, because you won and when nobody else won.
Yeah, and it feels, I felt guilty. I kind of had like survivor's remorse where I felt like, darn, I'm happy, but I don't want to seem too happy because I don't want them, because they're down, and I don't want them to feel worse or as if I'm gloating. Yeah. So it was one of those things, and Jason called that night and said, hey, would you like to come, with us and be introduced to everyone? And I was like, no, it's too early. Yeah. It's just too early. Maybe next time.
Yeah. So when did you, now I have to keep in mind, people watching, it's the staggered election. So me, Andrew Holmes, and Tammy Brown were already on the board when this last election happened, the last mayoral election. Okay. So when did you decide to go ahead and sit down and talk with the new mayor, or and even entertain a conversation, because we were on the opposite side?
That night, I actually received like a third-party call from the mayor, and the person was stating, hey, I'm going to make sure that I connect you all. Stated that the mayor wanted to make sure that she worked with us as a team, and that she was excited about having me on the team, and that we were going to do some great things together. So they invited me. I think their campaign team had a get-together, like a follow-up. Yeah. And I went there. That was the very first time I was able to celebrate. And that's the first time where I started getting accustomed to being around everyone and learning that this is my new team, and this is the new way things are going to go. So I had to get familiar with the new change. Yeah.
And so after that is the general election, which we knew she was going to beat the independent, because it's a Democratic area. So we knew she was going to win that election. And the general election, with the real election is the primary. We knew she was going to win the general. So after she won the general, then everybody kind of start making formal moves to work together. Talk about that time after she beat Ronnie Burge in the general election.
So after she beat Ronnie Burge, that was when our team was
solidified.
We had, like you stated, we had yourself and Tammy Brown on there
Yeah.
already, and I kind of knew Tammy a little bit,
Yeah.
not a lot. I knew you a little bit
Yeah.
because I helped you find a house.
Yeah.
Kiana, I wasn't really familiar with Kiana. Jason, I
Yeah.
was familiar with Jason because I knew that he had worked at the bank,
Yeah.
and I actually had voted for him one
Yeah.
election. So I was still trying to figure things out
Yeah.
because when we had our first meeting as a whole, it was then that I realized that you and I were kind of like the only ones that had faith in her in the mayor at that moment.
Well, let's put some context to it. Well, what happened was after she won, she wanted to sit down and meet with everybody. Me and her sit down and met, and she gave me Ed, we gonna work together. There's no big ass little. Well, she sold it.
Yeah.
And I knew from years of previous mayor it was contentious a lot. Separation of board members if a group of trustees didn't like the mayor, and it just was real tense sometimes. So she sold it. We gonna work together, and I was kind of like, we'll rally laws. I give you the respect because you want to see it. We're gonna work together. So she had a meeting with everybody to talk about camaraderie. It wasn't about working. It wasn't about no village business. It was about us working together.
Yeah.
So me and Britney came to the meeting because we were new to the whole group. Me and Britney kind of excited and kind of like real, excited about meeting with everybody. And me and Britney were like the only two people excited. Everybody else who's been around with the mayor were very standoffish and real quiet. And I said, I said, how is it that me and Britney are super excited about working together, but everybody else is like, but they had already seen what we didn't see yet. Talk about that.
Yeah, so it's really funny when I look back, and I look back at how we all came together.
Yeah.
And like you said, you and I were very excited. We were like, yes, we're about to, make some new changes. We're the youngest on the board in terms of just the previous administrations.
Yeah.
This is our time to make a change for the village.
Yeah.
And we were just super excited. And we looked over at Trustee House and Trustee Belcher, and we were like, yes, we're about to do this. And, this mayor has these plans, guys, this is exciting. And they were kind of just looking like, okay.
Real dry. They were real dry.
They were real, and we couldn't really figure it out. And you did say it. You was like, why is it that you all ran with her and you all are not as excited as we are?
Yeah.
And
and it wasn't per se excitement, because I caught flack after rally laws. I was like, okay, well, you're the new mayor. I didn't want to be hypocritical that I gave the previous mayor that I with certain votes and stuff like that, certain privileges that a mayor is due. I gave her the same option. I gave her the same, the same respect in that position. And I caught flack, but I was just saying, it's time for us to try to work together. We're younger. We were all excited, but good Lord, that lasted for what, 2 meetings?
Yeah, 2 meetings.
2 meetings. The first 2 meetings, if you go back to our YouTube page, they were much more, it was, count your votes before the meeting, or what do you think about this? Okay, we're gonna take that off. By our third meeting, it was everything rammed down your throat, putting 20-something things on the agenda, arguing you down if you don't, why are you this, you can call me, call me. So that's what had happened with both of us, being that we were from the opposing team. Anything else you want to say about that time?
Well, yeah, because at that time, I think is when we started realizing that things weren't going as the mayor stated that they would in terms of how the process was going to work. Yeah. So they started adding things to the agenda, and we're like, okay, maybe they should discuss some of these items. It's like they just wanted us to vote on it. Yeah. And we're like, what about the conversation? What about asking us if we had items to add to the agenda? There wasn't a lot of inclusiveness. And that was our very first sign that things were probably not going to go as we originally planned.
Yeah. So fast forward, we go through every meeting, it's an argument. Every meeting you're getting degraded, talked down to. Let's fast forward to right now. After 3 years, almost 3 years on it, 30.
Yeah.
What's your mindset? Because anybody watches know how bad the board meetings are. We get 20. Last meeting was 2,200 people watching live. What's the mind? What are you feeling before you go into that meeting? What are you feeling that Friday before that Monday going into the meeting?
Well, actually, things get you get a little anxiety.
Yeah.
I would say the Monday before the Monday of the meeting.
Monday before
Typically about a week in advance, because I typically say to myself, oh, next week, this time, you just don't know what's going to happen. So the anxiety typically starts for me then. It's like, you never know what to expect. And that's where things get tricky. And then because of the disrespect and the way that the mayor and the administration talk to you.
Trustee, you ain't getting the flow no more. You repeat the same thing every time.
Okay.
You need to
That's
start
for the
repeating the
record.
same
Just in
thing.
case.
Just for the record. I'm just letting
Just
you
in
know.
case.
We done with that.
The hardest part is being professional and staying calm and remembering what you're here to do. So my mom always say pray. She always tell me, pray before the meeting. Pray when you get to the meeting and ask God, talk to God and tell him to remind you why he put you in that seat so that you can remind the residents what you were here to do. Mm-hmm. And that helps a lot. So most time, all the time I pray. Sometimes I call the other trustees, I call the clerk, and I'm like, come on, let's just pray with me. I call my mom, I'm like, you can never have enough prayer when it comes to these meetings. Yeah. But that's the feeling. It's just, it's like stepping into a different territory, unfamiliar territory where they can say or do anything.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing when she first got in, you didn't realize the level of how far she's willing to lie about everything, the process of the bills, the process of how things get done. She'll just ram it down your throat and then will lie and say you do have it. Won't send over notes. She'll send sometimes she still sends the warrant list late. When she was a trustee, she demanded that you get the warrant list Thursday.
Why you just not sending us a package at 4:46? I got that today. So that's my other issue. So we didn't even have time to digest what it is you're stating here. But yeah, y'all throw it in front of us and get upset when we go against what you're saying, but we don't even know because we didn't read it. You just sent it to us. So why? We talked about all this. We're supposed to get better, but y'all study doing the same thing. Like, okay, trustees, we need y'all to vote on it now. Okay, we're gonna send it to y'all right before the board meeting. I know y'all didn't read it, but we need y'all to just vote yes. No, it don't work that way. Y'all supposed to give us stuff on Thursday so we can digest it, understand it, and come up with other options.
Never have a question. I tell y'all all the time, ask us. But y'all get here and we make the people stay here for hours. For what?
We just got the warrant list today at 2:00, 2:30.
Okay.
2:30.
I see it's not gonna go nowhere. So, what else?
Whoever's coming, I hope Sam Brown, you hopefully you get the warrant list before 2:30, the day of the election, day of voting. You're supposed to get it Thursday last week. We got it today at 2:30.
Okay. Anything else, trustee?
She's sending it Saturday, Sunday, and then we'll say y'all do have it. Y'all do have everything. Why she's not sending it? How is it though? I know when I was up there, it was hard to hear the level of, you were like, this girl's gonna lie about everything. Everything. Nothing is the truth. Everything is an exaggeration.
There's a foundation that's not registered, but it has nothing to do with you.
Correct. That's true.
Okay.
That's
so
true.
You're not aware of any of the work that they've done, money that they've raised, anything along those lines?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So she said in the interview that the foundation was not hers. This is from a council meeting.
Doing and I'm really, really big on, that's dear to my heart, is I'm real big on a cancer foundation. I have created Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation, and what that entails is helping everybody within the 17 municipalities with services.
Talk about how do you deal with when the lies come about your process and what you're supposed to be doing and you're not doing your job. Talk about that.
I think that I've grown immune to what I call her smoke and mirrors. So she's perfect when it comes to smoke and mirrors. She had this way of illustrating her own picture. Oh. She puts her own pictures together. She puts the characters in there. She makes it colorful. And sometimes she's so good at it that I question whether or not she's telling the truth. And I know she's not telling the truth. And I'm like, geez, that was good.
Yeah.
So what she does is she does a lot of leaving things out, like in regards to the bills. Because our main issue, and I think that the hardest part for us is the bills, when it comes to the bills and overseeing the finances.
We have not received financial statements showing where we are as the village since September. We have a jumbotron right here that we use for everything else. If we have, show us on a jumbotron so us and the rest of America can see where you all sent the trustees the financial statements, the credit card statements. We have not received credit card statements since last year around this time. At one point, when Trustee Belcher asked for them, the director, Tangenique, stated, we cut the credit card off. Trustee Belcher said, okay, can you just show us where we cut the credit card off? We still haven't received any proof showing that we cut the credit card statements off. Here's the jumbotron, show it to us, where you sent it to the trustees, showing us proof where we cut off the credit card statements.
What I continue to tell residents all the time, because you have residents that are like, we don't want to be in the limelight all the time, right? They say, we don't want you guys to argue. We want you all to get along, and we want you all to shed a more positive light on the village. And that's our goal, stepping in. But it's hard when you have someone that'll look you dead in your face and just lie. She will look you in your face and say something completely opposite of the truth.
Yeah.
We'll say, hey, because everyone knows that we haven't received, by this time, everyone who's been paying attention is familiar with the fact that they've been hiding the finances. Since September, we haven't received the financial reports. So we don't know, we used to be provided with the numbers. Yeah. They'll tell you where we stand financially, in terms of the village, the deficit. And once we started shedding light on that, because at first we would constantly say at the meeting, hey, you know, we're in debt, we're in a deficit. Yeah. Let's watch our spending, or let's prioritize our spending. Make sure that you're more transparent in terms of the spending, so we're aware, so that we can kind of assist with these financial issues that we're having, right? Maybe we need to make better decisions as a village. And something about that frustrates her, because she feels as if it's her way or the highway, or no way.
No way.
So instead of her compromising, she's like, hey, if I say that this is, we need this, we need these items, we need these items. So just vote on it, don't ask any questions, and hey, you know, and if you don't, I'm just gonna tell the residents that you don't want them to have the services. So you cannot vote on it if you want to, but I'm gonna tell them that you're the reason why they don't have a light on the block, or why their tree isn't cut. And we're like, no, we need to explain to them that you not prioritizing the spending is what's ultimately causing an issue with our lack of services, because everyone knows that you only have so much money to spend. And anytime you're spending more than you're making, that's when you end up in a deficit. So the hardest part is explaining to the residents why we aren't approving these certain items, or why we are having a problem with them doing so much spending. It's like, okay, what's the main issue?
And it's coming out when they threaten to repossess the cars. They're saying that they're running out of money, you know. And then I remember when the first budget came. Now, when she got in, you realize I was on the board during COVID. What our finance people did during COVID was reduce the spending. They had furlough days because they didn't know how the money's going to come in from what happened with COVID. So when she got in a little bit after COVID, she inherited a surplus and money. And so I was a department head for 4 years, and I used to have to present my budget to the trustees. So you would say to the trustees, I want A, B, C, and D. They would look at the budget and say, okay, you want this, you're going to get A. You can't get B and C because we ain't got the money. Okay. But when she got in, there was a surplus of money. We got a new fire truck, it was new police officers, new firefighters, new public works equipment, paving the parking lot in public works. This is stuff that we voted for.
We voted for it.
We said, she's the new mayor, we're gonna start off new, the money's here, let's give it to her. Let's vote for this stuff to get it done. And we gave her 95% when she won our first budget. she made a big stink out of the 5% we said, let's hold off on this. And so it's like you're right. It's 100%. I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna get. What did she tell you that one time when you said there's no compromise? You don't compromise on nothing.
So, and this is when I realized, because when things got tricky, whereas I realized that as a board we were gonna have to make some decisions in regards to who's right and who's wrong, and who's making the right decisions and who's making the wrong decisions. Because ultimately she was saying, hey, you know, I'm doing everything right. And then we had our finance people who are familiar with finances, like Trustee House and Trustee Belcher, and they're saying, hey, wait, something isn't right with all of this spending. If we continue to spend like this, we'll end up in a deficit. And I like to listen to people who have backgrounds or who are familiar. I mean, they're finance people, so I trust their decisions. So I looked over what they were saying, and I looked over what the mayor was saying, and I realized she wanted to increase the first year's budget. I want to say it was like $1.5 million to $2 million. And I said to her, I said, well, hey, I said, Mayor, how about you, because at the time she said we want to pass this budget, and the other trustees were like, of course we're not increasing a budget by $2 million the first year. Why so much, right? And I was like, well, you know what, guys, you all are just not approaching her the right way. You know, I was like, you just need me to go in and talk to her a nice way, and that's it. And boy was I in for a surprise. When I met with her, everything was fine until we got to the budget. So I said to her, I said, well, hey, Mayor, you at this time you want to, we'll just say $1.5 million for the sake of facts. I said, you want to raise the budget by $1.5 million. I said, how about we meet halfway? So instead of $1.5 million, you want to go an entire $1.5 million. We were more comfortable with what we've been spending the prior years, which was about $22 million. And I said, well, I'm new, but my common sense tells me that normally when you're dealing with budgets, you go based on your prior spending, right? That's even how we go about it in our household. So I said, well, let's meet halfway. Instead of $1.5 million, let's meet in the middle. And she said, well, you know, I don't think you understand how this goes. So I said, well, there's no way you compromise? She said, no. She said, you don't understand that mayors, the governors, the presidents, they all make the rules and everybody else just follows. So I looked and I said, well, Mayor, before we start acting a fool in public, are you sure there's no way you can compromise? She looked me in my face like I'm looking at you, and she said, no. And things have been interesting since then. Since
then. How do you feel about the last few meetings? She just had the department heads talking to y'all very disrespectfully. They have to attack you all as well. And it's so bad, they're not even good lies, because they're telling her lies. So they all have to come at you. What is your thoughts on that? Because it's hard to watch when I see the department heads talking to y'all crazy. The one time you had to check the housing director, like, no, I'm not with that right now.
Our job is legislation, because I know someone asked about our job. Could you let me finish more? Because I'm right now is not the time. Let me finish. So.
Well, talk about that thought process, how you feel when that happens.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating mainly because it's like a house divided already, right? We have a situation where we're trying to do the best for the residents. And at all times, I want the residents to know that whatever decisions we're making for them. And you already have the leader who is completely belligerent and disrespectful and rude. So now, on top of you having to be prepared with trying to make sure you address her as professionally as possible, now you have these employees of hers that don't quite understand that they're the employees for all of us. That they work for all of us on the board. So that's the tricky part. You do have them being disrespectful. You do have them chiming in where they don't belong. And now you feel like, okay, instead of having to make sure that you express yourself the best way in regards to her. Now you have to worry about someone else who has no real dog in this fight in regards to the checks and balances process, which is why I'm here, right? Checks and balances. So instead of her making it about checks and balances and saying, hey, this is their job, this is what the trustees are here to do, she's made them feel as if we want to destroy them in some type of way, or we have an issue with them, when our issue is not with any of the staff or any of the employees. Our issue is really just the way that they're going about things and their lack of transparency.
Yeah. I think one of a good example of her line, like she went on the Roland Martin show with the foundation. That was terrible. And then she explained that our meetings are illegal, but all you need is 3 trustees to have a legal meeting. And she refused. The ordinance says that there's 2 meetings a month. She cancels the second meeting of the month, the third Monday, and then she won't let the trustees in the meeting, into the boardroom or to the village hall to even have a meeting. And then she says everything we're doing is illegal. That's a good example of the level of lies that she does. Could you explain, and maybe I'll help you with this, is the warrantless process? And I like to explain it as, if I was a husband and I go out here and spend all the money and I bring home, my wife is the one that manages all the money. She makes sure I have this and this and that. I come home, I don't spend $20,000 I didn't budget for, and I say, look at this new car I got you. Pay for it. And your wife is going to be like, ho. That's exactly what she does. She spends the money, says, look, we got these vendors, they cut all these trees, pay for it. And look, like you said, she'll go to the residents, look at all the stuff that I'm doing, and they saying no to that stuff. Yeah. But she never ran it through the right process. She didn't do nothing the right way. So if I was a husband and I did that to my wife who managed my finances of a house, and I go ahead and spend money, then your wife would be like, well, you should have ran that for me before you bought this stuff. Because I'd have told you we don't have this, and that. So you need to stay within this realm. Talk about that process of the warrantless, what the warrantless is, and how she just violates that process all the time.
So we're supposed to have RFPs, which are bids for services.
Request for proposals.
Request for proposals. Thank you. Request for proposals, and it's for services tendered to the village. So they're supposed to. We have 2 meetings, and it's designed that way because the first meeting is the meeting that you're supposed to use for voting. That's your voting meeting. And the second meeting is the meeting where you have discussion. So anything that's coming up for a vote, that's the time where the mayor and the administration should say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. These are the services that we need as a village. This is how much we have in the budget. This is how much we want to spend. And these are the contractors who are interested. And they come in front of the board and the residents, right? Because ultimately it's not just for us to know. It's for the residents. We're doing work in the village. They live here. They should be able to know who's doing work around their home, right? It's only fair. So she's supposed to bring the contractors in front of us, and they're supposed to have a bidding process. That way we know that we're getting the best bang for our buck financially. So we know that we're not being overcharged. And it's no different than what we would do if we're hiring services for anything on our house, right? You would typically get a few quotes. And that's just to make sure that you're not overpaying for a service. But instead of her having the bidding process, she goes out and finds contractors. One contractor said that she found him on the street while he was cutting a tree for someone in the village. So she stopped him in the street and said, hey, I have some work for you to do. Never brought it before the board, never explained to us how much the services were going to cost us, never explained if the money was budgeted for. And that's where we have a problem, because ultimately we're like, hey, if you have the second meeting, we have a discussion, you've already done the RFPs, everyone knows. We know as trustees, the residents know who's competing for the bid, how much we're paying for the services, and whether or not we have the money, because it's just responsible. But instead of her bringing it before the board, she'll assign the work to all of these different vendors, totally unbeknownst to us. And then we're getting calls from a vendor after a while of them not receiving payment. They only call us because they're not receiving payment, and no one from the village is answering their calls, and they're calling for payment. And then they say, hey, trustees, you know, I'm trying to receive my money that the
Yeah.
village owes me. How can you help? And that's a lot of times how we are informed about the people that we owe
Yeah.
for services.
As we wrap this, bring it to a close, there's some serious allegations that came out about the Vegas trip. After she spent all that money in Vegas, took all them people in Vegas, you did an interview with NBC5 about the report that you read about the allegations that happened. Do you have anything to say about that?
I just like to say, from a woman doing Women's Month, right? It was I was extremely sad by the events that took place, or the alleged events that took place. It was sad. It was sad to watch. It was sad to hear, and it just puts me in a place where, as a woman on the board, it brings me back to the saying that I always tell other trustees, and that's no one is coming to save us, right? So I always tell the trustees that, and at one point years ago, we had hope in terms of, you know, someone's going to come and stop this. Someone is going to come and intervene, and someone is going to make this administration be transparent, make this administration do the right thing, stop us from being retaliated against, stop us from not being able to speak. We're being silenced. They were muting us. But again, I feel like we're 3 years in and no one's coming to save us, and things are just actually getting worse.
Yeah. And I think it's important to point out that while she's saying publicly they have the receipts, she's in court fighting right now. Her lawyers are arguing that they legally do not have to turn over the paperwork to the trustees, which is, that's the level of lies that she'll say publicly one thing, behind the scenes doing something completely different.
And we recently, and when I say recently, this morning, won a court case that indicated, one, that the clerk key was wrongfully removed from the bank account and should be reinstated to the bank account. Part two of the case indicated that the financial information that we are not being given, the board is entitled to it.
As we close, anything else you want to say?
I just want the residents of Dalton to know that we hear them. We hear their concerns for the residents who don't have lights. I want them to know that we're shedding light to the fact that they're taking first class flights and they have no lights.
That was her bar that she dropped. What was it? They're not paying for lights, but they're taking first class flights.
Yeah, they're taking first class flights, but residents need lights.
Yeah. And all these allegations are coming back that somebody was sexually abused. All that stuff is terrible. And trustee, did y'all know anything about that?
No. But again, everything is a secret for us. And that's the big fight. We're fighting for transparency. We're saying, hey, we have a job to do. And whether people want to accept it or not, we're here to do what the residents elected us to do. And as of now, I have about 11 months left. So I'm going to continue to spend the next 11 months doing what the 22,000 people, residents, elected me to do. So whether or not they feel as if, you know, because they have this thing where she say, well, I run a day-to-day operation. You run the day-to-day operation, but we're just with any other legislative branch. This is the legislative branch, so we create the ordinances. We oversee the finances. So there's still only so much that the administration is supposed to do. And instead of them allowing us to do our job, they're they're preventing us from doing our job by holding on to this information.
And then saying you're not doing your job.
Yes, and I tell them all the time, I say, well, put the information, I mean, you know, at this point, take me out the equation, right? Because I feel like as if the residents feel that this is a fight between the administration and the trustees, when it's not. This is a fight about right and wrong. Right, because we have to ultimately fight for the residents because we're their voices. So we just want them to understand that at the end of the day, We're going to continue to show up no matter how many times we're locked out, no matter even if our mailboxes are outside, even though we're muted, even though we're disrespected, every single meeting. We're going to stay prayed up. I believe as a village, we're stronger together, and we'll get through this. We'll get through this.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Trustee Norwood. Again, this is former Trustee Edward Steve. We're going to continue to do these interviews. I want to give a special shout out to all the YouTubers who are creating content off our page, the Anton Daniels, the Hannibal is Hungry. And then one of my favorites is O'Shea Dew Jackson. O'Shea Dew Jackson. Back at it again. It's entertaining, but he did a good write-up. He did a good video on me. He captured my mindset and what I've been doing, and I never talked to him. So it was a good video, and I really appreciate him for that. And thank you so much, Trustee Norwood, the youngest trustee. How old are you now?
35.
35 years old. And we're going to continue to subscribe to our Adult and Trustee YouTube page and our Facebook page. Peace.
And I thank you for giving us great content, for staying on top of us and making sure that we provide the people with the facts.
Facts. All right. Peace.